So first things first, Marlon, how are you?
I'm tired, but happy. Happy to be back out in the world, out on tour.
There was a couple of years where your life, or at least your profession, was kind of decimated in a way. Being back on tour now, and then touring with Lorde of all people, and then seeing those kind of audiences, what has that kind of transition been from being really busy and touring to 2 years of nothing to being busy again?
Yeah, it's very stark contrasts. You know, especially coming back into being part of this big, machine of the Lorde tour is. It's kind of nice, you know. It's because I'm not pushing, I'm supporting, so I'm not having to front the energy and be the main motivator. So I'm sort of like just easing back into it, but within a big machine with a great audience every night. So it's very I feel very lucky to be able to re-emerge this way.
Because obviously for everybody almost, the last couple of years have been times of reflection and kind of taking stock of where you are. How did you look at what you've done up till that point? And as I mentioned, I think you were quite heavily touring a number of years before. So how did you kind of take stock and think about what it is that you wanted out of this music thing?
Yes, I mean I've never been good at introspecting in that way. Okay. You know, I'm always a very sort of just more id than ego. It's just pure sort of going until I had obstacles, you know, and the obstacle of a pandemic was a good one, you know, a good one to as you say, to sit down and be forced by the world to take stock, and you know, I've been spending time with my parents and realizing how little I've been around up until this point. You know, it's not until you stop that you can really let the dust settle and get a good picture of things. So I think it's, you know, you find positives out of this kind of stuff, and that's one of the main one is that I love being home, and I love it's precious. It's precious to spend time with the ones you love, and had to make the time, and you know, you need to make it, otherwise it won't happen.
Yeah, because one thing I find interesting then is you've dabbled your toe into some acting as well, and then kind of going into that direction. So in terms of creative expression, has music always been kind of the main thing, or was there always another side to it?
Well, I don't know. I've always been interested in the bigger picture of things, you know. Not, you know, music and sound are just one part of the spectrum of experience. So I think just from the most fundamental point of view, it's finding new and novel ways to think about the world and to play with it. I'm not. You know, I've always been a musician, but it's never been a sort of categorical, like hard line, you know. So I'm always felt very open to just try different things out, and
right.
Yeah.
Now, going back to kind of the in-between period, because you released an album, Plastic Bouquet, with Casey and Clayton, which you, I suppose, weren't able to tour or anything, so it kind of maybe was lost in the ether in a way. So with what kind of mindset did you start working on what would eventually become My Boy?
Well, it was a fractured process, you know. It's very. Some of the songs on My Boy have their seed in as far back as 2018, 2019. Okay. So, and then some of them I wrote at the very last week of being in the studio. So it's, you know, it's definitely feels like I have to look back on it myself and at the body of work and well, this collection of songs, and be like, and I don't know, sort of pull it apart myself. And you know, it was a very disparate process. So but I've sort of come to be comfortable with that sort of disparate process of just, and knowing that whatever that is identifiable about me or consistent about me will hopefully come through regardless of stylistic or, thematic shifts within the record.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because this was either on the website or in the bio or something, but it was the album was mentioned as being more playful, shape-shifting creature. And in terms of what you just now mentioned, kind of having that diversity, but when I listen to the album, the thing that always ties it together, obviously, is your vocals and the way you use your voice. So is that something you place emphasis on, or is it just the way it turns out in a way?
Yeah, I think I just, from the inside, you feel like you're a million different things. You feel completely malleable and inconsistent. But of course, like people who know you as a person will be like, oh yeah, they're like this, they do this, they have this weird tick they do when they're nervous or something.
Sure.
So it's a lot more simple and consistent from the outside looking in than it is from the other way. So I think that's a realization that has helped me a lot.
Okay. And thematically then, because the previous album was pretty much a breakup record, and now there's other things on your mind, I suppose. So how do you filter through all those lived experiences and kind of, is that also an automatic thing that whatever you write, you kind of later figure out what you're writing?
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes I don't,
Okay.
Sometimes I don't figure it out either. It can take years to properly, for the dust to settle, and for, there's still songs that I wrote years and years ago and maybe it's because, I'm not the same man who stood in the same river, but it's just, I think it'll constantly surprise you, and so it's not worth trying to get too caught up in, what it all means. It's just let it wash.
Well, but is it then I don't know if this is the right word, but kind of like a purge for you, where you kind of have to get these thoughts out, and then you move on to
I think so. It's a different, it's something about it's either some sort of confession or some sort of bringing into the light that you get. That's sort of and then the world will go, okay, and then you move on and do something else again, okay. It's, I don't know. It's just the transformation from the darkness into the light is the process, and then it's once that's done, you're off back in the dark.
But this process then, because obviously as an artist, and it can be any creative artist, you're kind of at the mercy of the public in a way. You're putting yourself out there, for others to judge. So have you always been comfortable, or do you not pay attention a lot to that? And
Oh, you've got to be careful with how you relate to that. It's I was thinking about it, especially watching, like what Lorde or people who are in the pop world or who have some sort of part of that world. It's where you're really some sort of super signal for other people to put their experience into, and you've got to be careful how much you're just a satellite reflecting, and in how much of yourself you're putting into it. I think it's a delicate balance, and you can become too obsessed with being the satellite and forget to put out your own signals. Not that I'm saying I think Lorde does an incredible job of doing reinventing and laying the breadcrumbs, but it's just an interesting thing to notice.
Have you ever been swayed by kind of the industry, so to say, or have you always been quite even-keeled?
Oh, I mean, the fun of the game, it has its own charms, It's like, I'm never going to be a pop star, but it's to play with those tropes and to just for the sake of curiosity and novelty, to dip your toe in is enjoyable. I think for me, I don't feel any sort of artistic crisis at the coalface of it,
No, but that's what I find again interesting about this new record, My Boy. It is very eclectic, and there are elements of all kinds of music. There's one I wrote next to it, funky R&B-ish, and then there's another one Morning Crystals, which is I suppose the most country-ish song, and then so there's also all these different, and as you mentioned, there's some pop sensibilities here and there. So, are you very conscious of how you write, or how does a song generally start? Is it just you on the guitar and just?
No, it normally just starts in my head, and it's and it will often stay there for weeks. You know, it'll just be a hook or whatever, and then I don't know, I'm a little superstitious about committing things to paper or to the phone or anything. You know, I feel like it's as soon as I find it hard to edit and to self-edit, so I try and do as much of the work in my head before it comes out, and then from there it's sort of, once it's out, it very much I don't know, I feel like I'm just transcribing from that point on. Okay. So and interestingly, I have collaborated a lot and written a lot with other people, which is a whole other kind of process, because sure. You know, it really feels like a completely different thing to write with someone else, because you're having to socialize at the same time, you know.
Do you enjoy that, or do you prefer something like this where it's just insular and you can just kind of focus on your own?
Oh, there's a special sweetness to the introspection and doing it that way, but it doesn't always yield results, you know. The good thing about the social pressure of co-writing is that, there's someone in front of you going, what do you do? What? You know? Which is great.
No, but you mentioned kind of not liking that, or not editing yourself that much, that you kind of wait until an idea is fully formed before you commit to it. So are you, in that sense, very tough on yourself, or very, do you set the bar high for yourself?
I think so. I think I think I have to be, because of that fact that I can't. Once I sort of lose touch with the possibility of change after a point, so it does have to be a bit tough on the inside before it happens.
What song on the record did you have kind of the complete image of the quickest, in a way, where it kind of solidified, okay, this is it? Yeah,
well, I think My Boy, the song, is just, it's such a simple song, and I've always found those ones the most pleasurable, because they demand the least from me, and they sort of just tell me to sit down and say, I'll handle it, you know. Where everything follows. Once you've got the hook or whatever it is in your head, it's very sort of just very relatable to be able to find every other part of it. And that one, that song happened in that couple of hours, an hour or two. Okay. So it's just, they're always the most pleasurable, because it's, And is it then you just by yourself somewhere in the world, and then just that thing coming in and then focusing on it for a couple of hours, and then there it is? Yeah, pretty much. Sometimes it's more difficult than that, but for something like that, My Boy, it's very pleasurable to just get like the IKEA packaging, like with all the instructions like laid out. It's like, okay, I don't have to think, I can just be part of the process, you know. Right, and as we mentioned, then perhaps later on you might hear something in it or see something in it that you might have not realized at the time. So how do you see My Boy now? I don't know how long ago it was that it was written. There's an opaqueness to it that I find it hard to. Although it is very simple, there's a weirdness to it, you know. Thematically, I can't quite put my finger on what it's about either, you know, which is nice. It's nice not to. It's a musically simple song, but I'm sure it'll unfold itself and unpackage itself in weird ways again over time, and in a couple of years I'll be like, oh shit, I see. Well, that's interesting, because another thing that I noticed, and perhaps you've always done this, but that I particularly noticed it with this record, is that there's a lot of space in it. There's for music to do its thing, and it's not just filled with verses and you trying to sing. And as a result, I suppose the songs are all
kind of 3 minutes or not
Yeah.
too much over, and then keeping things well simple in a sense. Well, is that kind of the way you like to write, or as you mentioned just now?
I'm a little impatient, and I've always I've played in, or I've been in certain sort of scenes where we'll sort of jam out for a long time, or sort of like doomy guitar stuff, or and it's I enjoy it, but I get impatient with the cruising, like I think because I sort of very much grew up in sort of the listening to and playing a lot of country music and bluegrass. There's a certain economic sort of simplicity to things where it's like, okay, there's a little break here, but we've got to get back to business pretty soon, because it's it's like, and there's a sort of that sort of formula has always appealed to the impatient part of me. That's like, no, come on, we've got to keep going, or else we're never going to get through the record.
This is going to be maybe too philosophical or too vague or something, but what is it that compels you to create them? Because is it, as I mentioned earlier, is it something that needs to get out, or what is it that kind of makes you do what you do in a sense?
Every now and then there's a need, like, and then, I think on Make Way for Love, there was a need to process and to frame things in some way that wasn't just swimming around my head.
Sure.
So there's there are like real personal practical needs that come out sometimes, but it's novelty and curiosity really that's like it's just playing, getting in the sandpit and playing around. There's no like, I don't know, I don't feel like this deep artistic like need to feed into the universe, or to make it more beautiful or whatever. It's just sniffing, sniffing around and
seeing what you can find.
Yeah, it just comes out of being idle, or just daydreaming,
Well, mentioning daydreaming, there's I think there was a line about my boy in the bio. Now I can't remember exactly what it said, but there was a Māori strummer, and that you had kind of this fever dream of creating a complete album like that.
Yeah.
So can you take me to that time, those couple of weeks perhaps, that you were in this mindset of?
It was a long time coming. It's that style of guitar playing is, I grew up with it, and it's always been around me, and I've always found it, I don't know, it's compelling in whatever way, and it's and initially it comes from the very sort of like a classic Māori world of that sort of style, and most Māori songs have some iteration of that, like modernish Māori songs. So it just sort of. And then, of course, eventually, if it's in your brain, it'll start leaking into what you do. And I don't know, I'm really trying to be porous with cultures and with genre, and just that thing of it being curiosity first that leads you somewhere, and not thinking about how things sit within a cultural context or whatever. It's just there was just a period there where it was like, first My Boy came to me, and it's like, okay, there's one, and then there's another, like Don't Go Back, it's got a little bit of it too, and there's and it definitely it's still in my brain, it's still part of it's still the main thing, and so I'm sure I'll keep writing with it for a while.
And you grew up in that environment obviously as well, and sang in that environment in a choir. So does that kind of shape the way you sing as well?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I was a choir boy, so there's the sort of classical operatic side of things, and that sort of ties in with the Māori obsession for Elvis and like the crooners, So it's a pretty easy marriage.
Fair enough. There's a couple of songs I want to get into a little bit more. Like I mentioned, there's Well, you mentioned don't go back. That's the one where I wrote funky R&B-ish. So that feeling does that. You mentioned a lot of the ideas are already fully formed in your head. So what does the studio process add to a song like that, for instance?
Well, I mean, yeah, that was another part of this record is writing songs like Don't Go Back and knowing that going to the studio that there's a certain sort of sound that goes with that I haven't played with a lot. So yeah, it was just, and the producer Tom Healy, who I was working with, is a great sort of synth guy and great guitar player. So I knew that we'd have a bit of fun just finding that world, So that goes back to that novelty of being like, okay, we're playing in this zone now, so we'll bring in the synths, we'll bring in we go find a little weird little synthy hook part. Just I don't know, it's just sort of cosplaying in disco.
I wrote next to I think it was River Rival as well, synth pop. Kind of, so those textures that you use, are you completely free in what you are able to use?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. It feels like
from your own perspective, at least. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, there's a saying in Māori, he reo reke he tikanga, which means like sweetness. The sweet way is the right way, So it's just every problem has its own inbuilt solution that will make sense for it. So just follow your nose with it.
Right.
So there's no, just trying to stay away from that categorical thinking of, oh no, well that doesn't make sense because no one's heard me do that before, whatever. It's like
trying not to overthink things.
Exactly. Yeah. Get too heady.
Sounds healthy.
Yeah.
Well, with Don't Go Back, the one thing that I kind of noted down was I've spoken to musicians who feel that once they attain a certain level of notoriety or that you become a public figure in a sense, then they feel like they have to be the life of every room they kind of walk into, and that kind of that don't go back to the party line, that kind of reminded me of that. So have you ever felt kind of this idea that you have to live up to a certain idea of who
I've
you
always
are?
felt that. I don't know, I've always felt that need to, or that anxiety to keep things going, or whether it's this conversation or I feel that pressure that just comes from inside internally, just like, oh shit, I've got to something's going wrong, like someone is thinking of leaving, they're having a bad time, and it's exhausting,
I can imagine.
You get to the end of every day and you're like, oh, I did it again. I'm in that zone where I just have to make please everyone and make sure everything's tickety boo. So that song's about that for sure.
Yeah, because that's interesting, because obviously you're having quite a bit of success, and then you seem like somebody who's not really into that whole Hollywood lifestyle thing. But that's obviously part of the industry, I suppose. So and then you mentioned you still live in Littleton. You realize that you like spending time with family a little bit more. So how do you kind of balance those two worlds? Where I suppose if you go to LA and do a movie shoot or a tour with Lorde, that's the whole that's a stark contrast with kind of, I think, but I don't know you, who you are kind of privately.
Yeah, well, it's a battle, and it's hard to come down off tours properly, and it's just, it becomes just a thing of time management and allowing yourself time to come down, from a tour or from a shoot, because it's, it can be very easy to stay up and not realize that you're on the wrong end of the burn, and you get to that point where it's a little bit sort of, you just start feeding the machine and you can't stop. And so I think, as I say, as we were going back to the pandemic, just having the world stop around you is a blessing in disguise,
right?
For doing that. So but
It's very, sorry to interrupt,
No,
but it's
go on.
very interesting because so many artists I speak to feel that way. And that makes me think like the industry is kind of set up in a way where artists are being exhausted. They kind of, it's kind of, maybe it's part of the par for the course, but or maybe it's kind of, now after the pandemic we can find ways to kind of mitigate it a little bit. But
A big part of me thinks it's fundamental to what we're doing. You know, you're by design and by the nature of what you're doing, you're interacting with the hive mind or whatever. And you know, and some artists completely shut themselves away from that, you know, and are severely introspective, and you know, like the Kate Bushes of the world.
Sure,
It's just like the biggest news of the century is that she like said something about her music, you know. So it's so clear, you know, there are ways, but you know, even that, the way like someone like Kate Bush stands in contrast, like it's a stark contrast, and and that's a thing in and of itself. She's like publicly private, you know. So it's like, yeah, I think it's just part of the thing.
There's one other song that kind of two songs. Soft Boys Make the Grade, and thinking of Nina first. My first question was Nina an actual person or a specific person?
Nina is a character in a TV show called The Americans, which is like my favorite TV show ever.
Okay.
So like on FX in like the mid 2000s, I think. But yeah, it's an incredible TV show about Russian KGB spies living in suburban Washington in the 80s.
Okay.
And then they like have this great life. They've been there for 20 years and live this double life of being like waspy American citizens. And then an FBI agent moves in across the road, and like you know, hilarity ensues. But Nina is this character she's a KGB spy, and then she gets flipped and becomes a FBI agent, and then flips back again, and then keeps flipping to the point where she's like, you know, she's completely obliterated herself.
Sure.
There's no self left, and it's just different versions. And of course, you know, and with each flip is like further away from being trustful, or you know. So I just wrote this song about. It's on one level, it's about that. It's about the, you know, just obliterating out your own identity through being too slippery. And then on another level, it's about like watching a TV show and fetishizing characters, and like, you know, and that the white knight saviorism sort of syndrome that comes over mainly men who are just like the damsel in distress, you know. So
that line that's in there, that I believe in love in under certain conditions or in certain conditions. I love that line because it's a very, it's both funny, but it's also kind of true for a lot of people in a lot of circumstances. Yeah. So I do believe in love, but there's some asterisks to it.
We use love as a very broad word to like express our interest, and you know, it's like, and those people, you know, these people who are like free, you know, very sort of open and free loving, but then I don't think they are as much as they think they are. You know,
I think it's a noble idea, but I think realistically it's a bit naive, maybe.
We're too human to be. Like,
there's too much of a spectrum of good and evil in our humanity.
Way too messy. Yeah.
Finally, soft boys make the grade. Soft girls too. I think is kind of like after. What did I write to you? No dirt on me. I see none on you. I found that an interesting line.
Yeah. Well, that's about it sort of relates to Think of Nina in a certain way, but it's about just like using. It's about abdicating your own free will by the use of star signs or whatever, you know. It's like, and you know, I don't believe in free will, ironically either, but it's you know, we're still agents who, you know. But I'm not. It's not a song of condemnation at all. It's, you know, it's just an observation that you know, we go through different scientific revolutions and all these things, but we're fundamentally superstitious, and which is, I think, is a sign of humility. You know, it's a way of saying, I don't know what's going on. Actually,
sure.
And so it's a loving song. It's a little bit cynical and a little bit like tongue in cheek, but it's just it's saying, well, we're all off the hook. We're all responsible, but we're all basically off the hook.
We're doing the best we can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But the creating kind of that sonic landscape, and I wrote next to this one, lush production, and I really feel like that it's true for the entire album. It feels very warm, and as I mentioned, it's kind of spacious, and you let strings do their thing and all that stuff. So, how do you create kind of then the sonic landscape for a song like that?
Well, I think it's, you know, to go back to the writing process itself, for me, it's most of it happens internally, and then, you know, and then it's, sometimes there'll be surprises, you know, obviously whatever, you're limited by what's in the studio and who's around, and which is a good thing, you know, but I think, you know, it's, when I do the writing, it's a lot of the sound is implicit in the writing, you know.
Okay, fair enough. One last question then. Now that everything is going back to normal, or a sense of normal again, are you going to make some changes in terms of how you operate, given kind of what happened the last couple of years, or is that too difficult to kind of predict?
Just the practical changes of trying to be home more, and, you know, I'm sort of coming back, you know, I'm very excited to be out touring again, but there's that side of me that's like taking notes and saying, okay, how does it feel? You know, actually, how does it feel to be out here? It's tiring, you know, you're a little bit older than you were last time you were out, you know, you're in your 30s now, so it's, it's just, I'm just trying to use the opportunity to listen a bit more.
Sounds like a good idea. Marlon, may I thank you for your time?
Thank you, been great.
Thank you.